Good evening, all comrades. And before I pray, I just want to read a first stanza of a hymn that the founding father was Butler, that he always used to sing whenever he would carry on his preaching. And it says, "O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal hope." So this evening, as we ask God presence here, Father, we pray in the name of Jesus that He will continue to be a shelter to the oil field workers trade union. Even as we go through the stormy blast, Lord, you promise to be with us. Father, and I pray that you're going to continue to cover and lead our President General, Ancel George Roget, every executive member and every member of the oil field workers trade union. Father, and as today, oh God, as we keep this media conference, oh God, I pray, oh God, as the word go forth, that it will meet the hearts of all the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, especially those in authority, dear God. Father, and we pray that you continue guidance, protection, as we go forward ever, backward never, in Jesus Christ's almighty name. Amen.
Of the media here in our industrial capital, San Fernando. Let me welcome you to our media conference this afternoon to deal with an issue that would have escaped the attention of the majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago over the last few days. Now, there are so many things happening in the country simultaneously. If we are not careful, one could very well miss some of the grave injustices that are meted out to the people under the quote-unquote caring hands of those who have the responsibility to ensure that the citizenry, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that their interest is properly served. I want to start my discourse here this afternoon by asking a question to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, through you, the media, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's a simple question, but it's a most profound one. And that question is, as a people, how much more we are prepared to take until people get up from their slumber and respond to the injustice that is meted out to them on a daily basis by this government. How much more are people prepared to take? Because, you see, what I'm going to deal with here this afternoon is an issue that this government, this PNM government, since they came into office, you had the Minister of Finance telling the world that he would have inflicted pain and suffering on the population of Trinidad and Tobago by increasing the fuel price. Once, there was no riot. Twice, there was no riot. And then raised it a third time. And in fact, he did. And so my issue here this afternoon, the Oilfields Workers Trade Union's issue here this afternoon, is that the government is about to raise the cost of fuel for yet another time. So that since they came into office from 2015 to now, they have raised the cost of fuel to the population. If they're allowed to get away with this one, it will be 4 times. And let us remind ourselves what happens when they do that. When the price of fuel is raised, it is not something in abstract. Increased transportation cost across the board. The maxi taxis and the taxis and everybody involved in the transportation business immediately increase their costs, which costs don't ever go down. Increase food costs, because as transportation costs is increased, the cost of food stuff, food supplies across the country will increase. And of course, the knock-on impact of that with respect to inflation. So you have a situation where COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, Trinidad included. The country had been locked down for over a year now at different periods of time, at different levels. We are in a state of emergency with a curfew imposed and all of the restrictions that the state of emergency would legally allow the government to impose on the population. You cannot say certain things. You cannot be in the streets, so you can't protest. You can't make statements. They'll say sedition and they will incarcerate you. The country is literally held to ransom. And at that time, the government find it appropriate to unleash more pressure on the population. So they are going to now, and I'm taking issue with the statement made by Minister Young in the Parliament. The minister dismisses outright any question coming from the opposition, the official opposition, any question about why and the hardship that will be imposed on the population by the fact that they are increasing the cost of fuel. He dismissed that. And you know why? He dismisses that out of hand as being what? Mischievous and shenanigans, yes, and so on, and theatrics and so on. And he's allowed to do that because we are made to believe that take all the pressure you're getting from the government because the opposition would have done worse. The population is fooled into believing, accept the beating, the battering, the bruising, the abuse you are getting from the government because the opposition, it would have been worse under Kamala. So people literally are comatose. They are asleep. They are in their slumber. And they are walking about like lambs to slaughter, believing that it cannot be better. The first point I want to make here this afternoon is that anything is better than what now exists under this PNM government. Let's accept that. Because the pain and hurt and suffering that people are enduring right now, under lockdown, state of emergency, and here comes the government to tell you that, listen, they are going to increase the cost of fuel. And they fool the population by telling them, the ministers fool the population by saying to you that government is going to protect drivers, yeah, from costly gasoline. Let's ask ourselves a basic question. How increasing the cost of gasoline, where I would have to pay more than at the pumps that I now pay, they will protect me from that? They use as a justification the liberalization of the fuel markets. And here's what. They tell you that if the price goes up, you pay more. And if the price goes down, you will see a reduction at the pump. For over 18 months, we would have had a reduction in the price of oil. We have seen no reduction at the pumps here. What the government did for that entire period, they left the price of fuel as it now is. In fact, they increased it. And what you were paying for fuel while the price of oil fell is a fuel tax at the pump. So the population was made to pay a fuel tax for all this time. And because now they recognize with the opening up of the world's economy, there will be a demand now for oil. And therefore that commodity, through this increased demand, the price of oil will go up. And that price will be sustained for a considerable period of time. That's the forecast. And because of that, they recognize that, wait, we now will be paying more for oil, for fuel, occasioned by the increased cost of oil, and therefore let's just pass that on to the people, more hardship. They did not give you the benefit. They didn't choose to liberalize when the price was low, but they're going to liberalize now and pass on hardship on you when the price was high. And if you didn't do that now, we call on the government of Trinidad and Tobago to halt any plans to increase the fuel cost, which will bring burden on the population of Trinidad and Tobago. And let me tell you, if you think that it is against that background alone, let's examine the full context. They are going to increase water rate. It's more cost. They are going to increase electricity rate. Same ordinary people, all of us have to pay for that. They are going to raise the retirement age to those who would have paid for their working life. NIB contributions, they're not going to get it when they reach 60. They're going to defer that and tell you that you're living too long. They are going now, they tell you, get ready, get ready. They are going to introduce property tax. All of this at a time when many, many thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs. People have seen reduction in their income, their real income, in two ways, both in terms of the increased cost of living and a direct reduction because employers are having a field day. So people are actually suffering daily. And on top of all of that now, they are going to just, in a most callous way, increase the cost of fuel. Because what? Because we are in control now, and it's COVID time, and it's state of emergency time, and therefore, people cannot react, they cannot respond, they cannot protest, and so on. So more hardship to the population. And while this occurs, bear in mind Trinidad and Tobago, before you take up the gun to shoot the messenger, bear in mind while all of this occurred, no less than 5 government ministers within the last year would have what? Purchased new vehicles, high-end vehicles. Yeah. Think about that, let that sink in for a while. And how did they do that? Because they pay no purchase tax on those vehicles. So theirs was the priority. So you check the minister of this and minister of that, whose only priority as they come into office, after they tell you you make the right choice, is to purchase vehicles and so on. Because property tax, property tax is coming, but purchase tax on those vehicles, they don't have to pay that. Those ministers, fuel costs would not affect them because they get all kinds of allowances and so on. In addition, perquisites, in addition to their salary, that would allow them to purchase fuel and so on. And some of them actually would pay no, they will have their vehicles filled up and so on, and they would not pay for fuel. But the point is, whether they have it filled up without paying or they pay, they will get a special allowance for that. Their salary is not touched. Their salary is not touched at all. So they are in a place where they cannot feel sympathy. They cannot empathize with the public who are under pressure. They are in a strange place. And they tell you, all of us, we're in a good place now. But they are in a state. Trinidad and Tobago is as though the government has long left, long vacated. And what you have now is some aliens that in the cabinet that take over the government, Because I cannot believe that there are people actually so heartless on top of all of this pressure to put more pressure on the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We are in a pandemic situation, man. People are suffering. People could hardly put food on the table. We haven't come out of, heaven knows when we will come out of this situation. They cannot even procure vaccine for the population. And it is only fool the people, fool the people, fool the people. And it is because people are allowing themselves to be fooled, because they are positioned themselves in various camps, not excluding race and political support and so on and sycophantism. They are allowing the government to get away with this ruse. But the Office Workers Trade Union, at the expense of shooting the messenger, we will continue to put ourselves outside and call a spade a spade. This government has failed. The economy has flatlined. Let's be frank. The economy has flatlined. There's no new revenue stream. All of the revenue stream, oil and gas production down, LNG production fall. All of their revenue earning capacity has shrunken at this moment. And because of what? Poor policy position, poor governance, and because of their bad performance, poor governance, they are now going to make the people pay. The people of the country are going to carry this heavy yoke, this heavy burden on their shoulders, as we are asked to meekly wait and move on up and take pressure in your car, left, right, and center, and don't say anything. Because if you only say anything, in fact, if you only ask a question, when they make their presentation, they will tell you, stop right there. You stop right there. You making mischief. And words to that effect. They talk down to you, tell you what they want, how they want. And you know, let me just put something in context. The people who are doing that, they are a minority government. Let's just get that right. It is only 28% of electoral support they got at the polls. In other words, of all those persons who are entitled to vote, whether they vote or they didn't vote, eligible to vote, only 28% supported this government. Some 322,250 persons voted for them, out of 1,134,136 persons, which means that over 810,000 people did not support this government. Let's do the math. Over 810,000 people did not support them. But here you have a situation where this minority government is imposing pain and hardship and suffering on all of us. I think that it is time for us to wake up. This is a wake-up call. What type of society we are leaving for our children? What type of tomorrow we will have if we did not get up and speak out today? And if you believe that you are a PNM supporter and that it would not impact you, wait until the cost of transportation goes up. Wait until the cost of foodstuff goes up. Wait until the entire cost of living goes up, and so on. In a situation where the government could have done better, they will tell you that they have no choice, that because all of these revenue streams fell, because the country is earning less, that they have no choice but to give you additional pain and suffering. But they would not tell you the reasons for that. And worst of all, they would not take responsibility for that. So here you have a situation where the country produces its own feedstock for a facility, a refinery, that processes that feedstock and produces fuel for the country. They shut that down. So we're going into 3 years just now since they shut that down, in preference to purchase fuel on the open market. And it is that shutting down of that facility, not being able to maximize our ability to process our own crude and make our own fuel for our local consumption and foreign export. It is that decision that has them in that bind right now. Because whatever scarce foreign exchange they have to use that to purchase fuel for the motoring public. And it is because they see on the horizon right now that the oil price is going to rise and it is going to be sustained at a high level for a considerable period of time. They now promise you that, listen, when it drop back down, we get it will drop at the pump. The price will drop at the pump. and they compare you with the United Kingdom, this minister, this disingenuous minister, Minister Young by name, but all by peddling misinformation, all by fooling the people. So his name is Young, but he is very old in terms of the length of time he is fooling the people. So he compares Trinidad with the UK and the US, and not tell you that the stimulus packages that both countries have to take care of their people coming out of the pandemic. In fact, in the United States, they would have had from state to state, the government would have taken the decision to ensure that on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, people are given stipend. People are actually paid so that they can spend more. Here you have a situation where you don't have. The little you have is going to be extracted from you. And there, without even batting an eyelid, comes in the parliament and says in front of everybody that they are going to liberalize the market and they are going to protect you now from the increased cost. What nonsense is that? What paradoxical BS is that? The point is, they are going to increase for yet another time, if we allow them, the cost of fuel to the population. And that is going to bring extreme hardship on those who could least afford across the board. And so we call on the government to explain to the population what they did with the surpluses that they gained over the period of time, that time when the oil price was low, when they kept the price of gasoline and fuels at the pump at the same price it is now. In fact, they increased it, and the price was low, so the difference they cream off, what did they do with that? Let them tell the population this hue and cry, and they tried to fool people about 2 weeks ago. After we explained their failure at the economy, their failure in terms of oil production and so on, they responded by saying Heritage made a profit, over $1 billion in TT profit. How is that profit benefiting the people of Trinidad and Tobago when you are going? That means nothing to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because you are now going to increase the price of fuel. Trinidad and Tobago, whatever differences you might have, for whatever reason, all of us are in the same boat, and that boat is sinking. And if we do not, at this time, stand up and call on those who are given the responsibility to protect the interests of all of us, and to ensure that we see a decent standard of living, and to ensure that the country has a decent future, if we do not stand up now, there will come a time where we will be faced with the two saddest words in the English language, and that is too late. Those two words, too late. Because there will be no future for us. The time to stand is now. So I call on all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to stand with the OWTU and the trade union movement, to tell the government that if there was ever a time that they are showing their insensitiveness, if there was ever a time that they are showing their fangs of heartlessness, if there was ever a time that they are putting burden on the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we see through all of the facade and so on, and all of the smoke and mirrors, they are doing that right now. And I call on you to join with me to ask the government, to demand that the government halt on their plans to increase the cost of fuel. And I want to end by asking the people again, through you members of the media, I want to end by asking you, how much more as a people are we prepared to take while these people do as they please? I want to also remind everybody that we challenge them to an open discussion and debate on any one of the issues. Don't attack the personality and so on. Let's deal with the issues. That the economy has been flatlined. Where did I get that information from? It is from their own records. From their consolidated monthly bulletin, recorded from January to June 2020, looking at the performance of the economy. We look at the performance of the energy sector. We saw declines in each sector. So let's just dress back for a minute and put aside the personalities and let's deal with the facts. The fact is that our economy has flatlined. And you, the people now, are asked to pay for the poor performance of the government. And I empathize with you members of the media, because he can't do us that. He will do you that. I empathize with you. The Prime Minister dare not talk down to us like that. But you who have a responsibility to ask questions on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you are treated like nothing. Talk down to, stop right there. Mischief you're making, and all of that, and so on. When he backs. So here you have a situation now where the government say that they are going to protect you from costly gasoline, from those retailers, because we are liberalizing the market. And so we're going to protect you from those retailers to ensure that those retailers don't dig out your eyes. So the pothounds and so on, we will protect you from that. While the Rottweiler bite you. So the Rottweilers, and they're biting you, and they're telling you they will protect you from the little puppets and so on that nibble at your feet. You could fool some of the people some of the time. You could even fool some of your people all the time. But you can't fool all of the people all of the time. Thank you. All right, so questions.
Okay, Mr. Roget, based on what you're saying there, the media is treated like, and you can't take, the OWTU can't take it. What is the OWTU going to do as regarding this now? Straightforward.
Well, just welcome, Ivan, let's welcome you to the press conference, into the press conference, because we were talking about calling on the population as a first step to begin to wake up and to let us all together make a definitive call on the government to halt the increase of fuel, because at this time, this is the worst time to put more hardship and burden on the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I dare say that the SOE that has been imposed, and everything, COVID is being blamed for everything right now, anything, it's COVID, right? So they're performing badly long before COVID hit our shores. The pandemic hit our shores. But COVID is being blamed. And they use the state of emergency to keep people in check. So we cannot be in the streets right now. We cannot do the traditional things, use the traditional tools that we would normally use, that was successful in the past and certainly will be successful in the future, but we can't use it right now. But to all of that I say that the state of emergency must come to an end. It would not go on forever. The pandemic must come to an end. It can't go on forever. And when that time comes, rest assured, the OWTU and the trade union movement, we will be back on the streets doing the things that we do that are successful, and quite a lot more. Yeah? So rest assured, Ivan, that we are going to respond. We have a role, a responsibility, and a duty to perform to ensure that those who are without a voice, we provide a voice for them. Those who are afraid to speak out, that we speak out on their behalf. Those who can least afford, those who are suffering and they don't even have the strength to speak, that the trade union movement stand in their defense and speak out, regardless of the consequences and so on. Regardless of even those who are suffering under the uncaring hands of this government, that regardless of this, still give support to the government to inflict more pain and suffering on them. We have a responsibility to speak out. And so they can get on their talk show hosts, talk show hosts, yeah, and are probably not far off there, in the mispronunciation, but they can get on their talk shows with their paid assassin, those hosts and so on, those P&M assassins, to denigrate trade union movement, shoot all the messengers, but that does not change the price of cocoa.
So
does not change the price.
Has the government indicated any intention to maintain some of the existing fuel subsidies?
They say they were moving on with it, and I'm surprised that the media didn't pick that up, and that is not a headline issue.
No, because
they're going to,
right.
Listen.
Because the reason I ask the question is that if you're going to liberalize the market, it means that the price of fuel locally would be dependent on world fuel prices.
That's right.
It will be dictated by world fuel prices.
That's right.
So the question is whether they intend to maintain some of the subsidy, or are they going to remove all the subsidies?
They're going to move. They are going to remove all of the subsidy. So you are now you will have to fend for your life and your livelihood, because you will be subjected to the vagaries of the international price in a situation where you produce a commodity that can be converted into fuel. In a situation where if there's one thing that can be shared across the divide, where every citizen, rich or poor, young or old, can benefit, is through the subsidizing. That is going to be taken away. Yeah? And as that is taken away, no skin and grin in this. It is that the people are going to feel the burden. And as I mentioned, remember, when oil price hit an all-time low recently, where was the price of fuel at that time? They didn't rush to say, well, listen, you will get a big benefit because we are now going to drop the price of fuel at the pumps. No. They cream off all of that surplus, that difference. And now these wicked people are coming to tell you, the public, well, hard case, I'm sorry for you. We can't do better. We now have to attach the cost of fuel to the cost of oil on the international market. So whatever they charge, we will, you have to pay for it, including the different markups, because they are going to bring in that fuel, and Paria is going to add all of the different markups on that, sell it to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler, Unipet and NP, and they now will sell it to the retailers and tell you that they are protecting you from the retailers, when in fact the government would have added on all of the cost to the international cost of oil and brought that burden to you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, while people are in their slumber, and while people sleep, and while people are divided over all kinds of different lines, political, geography, race, and so on, just divided. And they have us quarrel with one another while they continue, these people at the top continue to oppress all of us at the base here. And let me just remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the people who are doing that are the people who told you that you made the right choice. But that those people, in no less than 5 of them, and there are more who right now are placing their orders for vehicles, would have ordered and already received tax-free vehicles. So while you would have to pay all of this purchase tax and so on, they don't have to pay that. While you have to pay increased fuel costs at the pumps, they don't have to contend with that. While your salary was reduced, they don't have to deal with that. While you lost your jobs, they don't have to deal with that. The cost of living that you have to stretch to make ends meet, ends don't even come close again, far less meet. You have to contend, they don't have to deal with that, partners. They don't have to. So they could, if someone is not suffering and not feeling the pain, such a person can inflict enormous pain on you because there's no measure to him the amount of pain that you are feeling, and tells you that that is the way to go. And take that in your tail, because the other people will do worse than that. And that is the state of our country, Trinidad and Tobago. We have to wake up.
So,
we all have to wake up.
So, Mr. Roget, The government said that they're not going to liberalize the market. That is going to happen immediately, right?
What did you say, Ivan?
The government is saying that they're not going to liberalize it immediately, right? When do you think it will be a good time? And also, economists have been saying that the subsidy is bad. What's your opinion?
My preference is to listen to the pain, hurt, and suffering of the hundreds of thousands of people rather than these paid economists that say what you just said. My preference is to listen to and defend the interests of the many hundreds of thousands of people who today are suffering, who lost their jobs, who had a reduction in income, and who are going to face pressure at the pump, and so on. And by the way, remember the statement? If you open and close in your fridge, let me tell you again, the government is not going to close down Petrotrin. Remember that statement? So you would want to pay close attention when they say they're not going to liberalize the market, and so that is coming. Property tax is coming. Yes, increased electricity rates are coming. Increased water rates are coming. And all of that will come for the average citizens who can least afford at this time. The point we wish to make, though, is that the people who are tapping the desk in the parliament, wrapping the desk in parliament and so on, and dismissing out of hand any concern raised to the contrary by anybody in the parliament, those people who are wrapping the desk, their business fixed. The people of Trinidad and Tobago, the suffering masses, theirs is anything but fixed. They are in deep, deep, deep peril right now. This country is in crisis, and people ought to be told that. Yes?
So based on a website here called Global Petrol Prices, the price per liter of US gallon is 91 cents. This is roughly about $6, $6.10 per TT. So if they go to liberalize the market, how much can we see the prices raise at the pump? This today, as of July 5th today, the price is 91 cents per liter on the international market. So how much are we going to see the price raise? If you're all saying the forecast is fuel prices are going to raise globally, how much are we going to see an increase at the pump if it is to do liberalize the market?
And that's anybody's guess where that will go. But the point we wish to make is that in liberalizing the market at this time, liberalizing the market, where the price of oil is forecast to increase based on the world demand as world economy opens back up, there will be a great demand for oil. And commodities like fuel and so on, it is attached to the price of oil, and therefore the price of fuel will increase. And so once they have to pay more for fuel outside, and they pass that cost on to you in addition to the logistical cost and so on, and imagine that they will, because remember, they operate a facility called Paria, who all they do now is buy fuel, bring it here and sell it back. Pay US rate and sell it back for TT. And therefore, the cost of bringing that in, procuring that, storing it and so on, and making it available, that cost will also be added on. So brace your back, get ready to pay much more than even the going rate for fuel as they liberalize the market. But they wish to also say they hoodwink you with this headline that say government, and this is, I mean, like everybody comatose here because they're increasing the cost of fuel, and they tell you government will protect drivers from costly gasoline while at the same time increasing the cost of gasoline, and they point you to the retailers who they say they will cap them at a certain level. But that's not the big problem, you know. The big issue is the big chunk, the difference you will now have to pay because of what is attached to the cost of fuel international, oil internationally, for which the cost of fuel is connected, directly connected. And so I come back to the point of how they ill-manage the economy. It's like the parent who gamble out, spend out, waste the money, and so on, and blame the children. And the children are to suffer because they waste the money. They didn't manage the economy good. And the people in this country just have to take that. We challenge them to tell us that oil production and gas production went up. We challenged them to tell us that LNG production had increased. We challenged them to tell them that they found new revenue streams. All of those things increased fuel costs in this country right now. Halt immediately.
I was asked another question. The Prime Minister was asked a question about food prices at the last press conference. So the reporter asked about the rising the cost of food, but he didn't really say if the government is going to think about it. So are you saying now that the same thing happening with fuel, where that once it's liberalized, the government will be able to say, okay, it's too high now, you need to drop it?
Exactly.
Similar with the food
No,
prices.
exactly. We are going to be faced with runaway food prices. And remember what I said about agriculture and so on. And the government has done precious little or nothing to support our local farmers and agriculture. And therefore, we will be faced with exorbitant food prices. And we will be at the merciless hands of those food importers. And so on, again, bringing in foodstuff, making their markup and so on, and just passing it on to you. And they will be with their hands folded, the government that is, while you, the citizens, are going to suffer. It has always been the case. I mean, the argument has been profoundly made time and time again, not just by the literature, but also by the practice, that anytime you raise the cost of fuel in a country, particularly in Trinidad and Tobago, the cost of food prices, foodstuff goes up. And therefore this time there will be no exception at all. And then let me just add to all of those things. You know, while all of those things are happening, crime is still taking place. Crime is still running away in this country. While all of those things are happening. So we are setting up a powder keg, a situation here where chaos will reign. We are law-abiding citizens. We feel that the government has used its authority through the Constitution, because they are the government. They are using their parliamentary majority to inflict more pain and hurt and suffering on the people. All of the members of all of the parliament, all of the members of parliament, all of our members of constituency, call on your parliamentary representative, your member of parliament, to go to the parliament and speak out against the government's intention to raise the cost of fuel. Opposition, we call on you to do your job. We call on you to focus exactly on this issue of increased cost of fuel to the population and so on, because it is in the view of the government. They have absolutely no problem if everybody goes home tomorrow morning, because that's their model. That's the myopic thinking of the government and their Minister of Finance. They have no problem when thousands of people are retrenched. No problem at all. And then they tell you that they collect less tax. Then they tell you that there's nobody to pay NIS. But they have no problem when thousands of persons are unemployed and more to go. And so if we allow their model to continue, there will just be 41 people working in this country. And that's the members of parliament, the people in the parliament and in government. And if you allow them, the government, if you allow them, it will just be those people in government and to hell with the rest. But ours is a position that is rooted in national pride and national interest. And therefore, it is that place we are coming from when we say that the citizens ought to be protected from the uncaring and insensitive, callous hands of this PNM government. Yeah? Yeah. Thank you very much. Of the Prime Minister, regardless if you don't know anything about energy and so on, drilling and workovers and so on, refining and so on, you could be in charge of a Paria, you could be in charge of a Caracara refining, you could be in charge of TPHL, or you could be in charge of a heritage and so on. You don't have to know anything about those entities, but you could be in charge. Your only qualification is you're a good friend of the Prime Minister, yeah? Or you could be, worse yet, a Minister of Energy who knows nothing about energy, yeah? Thank you very much. Stay tuned. Next question.